You took Mom's money when she needed you most. My sister accused me at my mother's table, but I had her texts asking me to move the savings first, so I looked at her and said, "Read the date on those messages again," while Mom reached for her glasses and saw the transfer history. The worst part was that it happened in my mother's kitchen, with a bowl of cold green beans between us and a birthday cake no one had touched. My mom had turned 72 that day. She had insisted on making dinner herself, even though she had spent most of the afternoon tired and short of breath from the heat. She was sitting at the head of the table, wearing the reading glasses she only used when something mattered, and she kept asking everyone to eat before the cake melted. My sister was sitting across from me with that tight expression she got when she was trying not to look angry. I had seen that look a lot over the last year. I had learned too late that it usually meant she had already decided what the story was supposed to be. She had been on edge all evening. At first, I thought it was because of the hospital stuff. Mom had been in and out of appointments for weeks. Nothing dramatic at first. Just dizziness, low blood pressure, one fainting spell, then a string of tests that left all of us exhausted and irritated. My sister, Lauren, had started calling herself the responsible one after that. She said she was the only one who really lived close enough to help. She said I only showed up when it was convenient. She said a lot of things once she realized people would listen to her if she sounded wounded enough. The thing was, I had been the one handling the bills. I had been the one at the pharmacy. I had been the one driving Mom to cardiology when Lauren was busy with work. I had been the one logging into the bank portal because Mom could not remember every password anymore and did not want to keep writing them on sticky notes like some kind of scavenger hunt. Lauren knew that. She just kept acting like she did not. That night, the actual fight started over something stupid and small. My mother asked Lauren to pass the bread. Lauren missed the plate because she was staring at her phone. I passed the bread to Mom instead. That should have been the whole thing. Instead, Lauren looked up and said that I should probably be careful with anything else I was moving around behind everyone's back. I remember blinking at her because I honestly thought I had misheard. Mom looked between us and asked what she meant. Lauren put the phone face down on the table and told Mom she had been hearing things. She said people in the family had been asking questions about money. She said some people had been moving funds without telling anyone. She said she did not want to upset Mom on her birthday, but she was not going to sit there and pretend she did not know what was happening. I felt my stomach drop because I knew exactly what she was talking about. 3 months earlier, Mom had asked me to move her savings, not because I wanted to touch it, not because I was trying to get access to it, because she had gotten scared after one of her neighbors got cleaned out by a phone scam. It was the kind of thing that always feels distant until it happens in your own zip code. The neighbor had wired money to someone pretending to be from the bank. Then the bank account got hit again 2 days later because the woman had repeated security answers over the phone. Mom had heard the story from church and then spent 2 nights unable to sleep. She kept telling me she did not trust the old savings setup anymore. At the time, all she wanted was for me to help her move the money into a more secure account with better fraud protection and a lower chance of someone getting access through the old debit card. It had all been legal. It had all been done with her consent. She had texted me about it herself. She had asked me to take care of it the next morning before Lauren got home from work because Lauren, in Mom's words, made everything into a family meeting. That was the part Lauren was now pretending had never happened. I did not say anything right away because Mom was already frowning and trying to follow the conversation. I knew that if I reacted too fast, Lauren would turn it into me getting defensive. So I asked what exactly she thought I had done. Lauren sat back and told Mom I had been transferring her money around while she was sick. She said she had checked the statements and something looked off. She said that every time she asked me what I was doing, I dodged the question. That one actually made me laugh a little, not because it was funny, but because it was so brazen. I had sent Lauren the statements myself twice. I had offered to sit down with her and go line by line. She had never taken me up on it. Now she was acting like I had been hiding in the dark with a flashlight and a crowbar. Mom was looking from one of us to the other with that exhausted expression older people get when the fight is coming too fast and they are trying to stop it with their eyes. She asked me to explain. I told her I could. Lauren interrupted before I got the first sentence out and said she already knew the explanation. She said I had taken advantage of Mom while she was weak. She said I had moved money out of the savings account and into something she could not even access. She said I had done it because I thought Mom would not notice. That was the sentence that changed everything, not because it was especially clever, because I realized at that second that Lauren did not actually know what I had done. She had a story. She had the outline, but she did not know the details, and I had the details, all of them. I had kept them because I do not trust memory when money is involved, especially family money. That habit had saved me before. It saved me again that night. I reached for my phone and opened the text thread with Mom. The messages were right there, dated, time-stamped, and impossible to argue with unless you were willing to claim my mother had somehow faked her own phone. I turned the screen toward her first. Her glasses were already halfway down her nose, and she reached for them with that slow, deliberate motion she used when she was trying not to panic. Lauren saw the screen and went still. Mom adjusted her glasses and started reading. The first text was from her. It said she wanted me to move the savings first thing in the morning. The next one said she did not want Lauren knowing until it was done because Lauren would make a big scene and try to stop it. The one after that said she was nervous about leaving the account open because the old debit card was still linked, and she did not like the idea of anyone being able to drain it if something happened to her. Then there was one more from her where she asked me to print the new statements and bring them to her when I came by. I had not edited those texts. I had not sorted them. I had not colored them to look better. They were just there. Mom looked up at me first, not Lauren. She was confused at first, then embarrassed, then genuinely upset that she had even been made to feel like she needed to choose sides at her own birthday table. Lauren said I had probably pressured Mom into sending those texts. That was a dumb move on her part because she knew Mom better than that. My mother was not meek. She was not easy to steer. She was just tired. Tired people say yes to a lot of things because they want the noise to stop. Mom set the glasses down and asked Lauren why she would even say something like that without checking the dates first. Lauren started talking faster. She said the texts did not prove anything. She said I could have been manipulating the whole thing for months. She said the transfer history was probably incomplete. That was when Mom asked me for the bank printouts. I had them in a folder in my car because I had learned not to show up empty-handed around this family anymore. I went to get them while Lauren sat there with her lips pressed together and stared at the table like she wanted the wood to split under us. The folder had everything: the original statements, the transfer confirmations, the bank notes from the in-person appointment, the email chain with the branch manager, the fraud alert I had set up afterward, the notes from the day Mom signed the authorization forms, even the little receipt they had printed when we updated the password and set the account alerts to go to Mom and me both. I brought the folder back and laid it on the table in front of Mom. She started reading, slowly at first, then faster when she realized the dates lined up exactly with her own memory of the scare. The money had not vanished. It had not been hidden. It had been moved from her old savings account into a new high-yield account in her own name with a fraud hold and online access locked behind two-factor authentication. Her name was still the primary owner. I was listed as an authorized contact, not a co-owner. The transfer history showed the balance leaving one account and appearing in the other the same day. It was all boring bank stuff, which is usually what makes it convincing. The dramatic lies always sound dramatic. The truth usually looks like paperwork. Lauren must have realized she was losing the room because she changed tactics. She said the problem was not the transfer itself. She said the problem was that I had not told her. She said as Mom's daughter, she had a right to know when large amounts of money were moved. That sounded reasonable for about half a second until Mom asked her when exactly she had become the self-appointed guardian of every financial decision in the house. Lauren muttered that she had been helping. Mom, still reading, asked her which part. That one stung because it was fair. Lauren had helped with groceries a few times. She had driven Mom once to urgent care when I was out of town for work. She had taken credit for everything after the fact, though, which in my experience is how people get a reputation for being indispensable without actually being dependable. The tension at the table shifted after that, not because anyone calmed down, because Mom had finally stopped being confused and started being suspicious. That is a very different look on an older parent. Confusion is soft. Suspicion has edges. I could see Lauren noticing it too. Her jaw tightened. She said she did not understand why Mom was letting me control the narrative. That was a strange thing to say in front of a stack of printed bank documents she had not even bothered to look at. Mom asked her again to read the messages. Lauren refused at first, then reached for them only because she realized refusing would look worse. She squinted at the screen, and I watched her expression change in real time when she saw the date stamp. The messages were from the week before the transfer, not after, not months later, before. That was the detail she had needed to ignore if she wanted the story to work. The whole accusation had been built on the idea that I moved the savings and then invented the permission later. The dates made that impossible. Lauren tried to recover by saying texts were easy to misunderstand. Mom asked her what part of moved the savings first thing in the morning was unclear. Nobody answered that one. I remember the silence so clearly because it had this awful buzzing quality to it. The refrigerator kicked on. Somebody's chair legs scraped against the tile. My mother's birthday candle holder, a little ceramic thing shaped like a bird, sat by the salt shaker like it had no idea lives were falling apart around it. Mom kept looking at the papers. Then she asked me why I had not shown her all of it sooner. That hurt more than Lauren's accusation, honestly. Not because it was unfair, because it made sense. I told her I had shown her the confirmation text back when I moved the money. I told her I had brought the first statement by after the account change. I told her I had assumed that was enough because she had seemed relieved and had moved on to asking about her doctor appointment and whether I could fix the printer. That was true. It was also the exact kind of family mistake that turns into a weapon later if the wrong person gets interested. I had trusted that everybody would remember the same version of the story. That was naive. Lauren was good at living in the gaps between what was said and what was proven. Mom looked at Lauren and asked her why she had not just asked me directly if she was worried. Lauren said she had tried. I almost laughed because that was technically true, but only in the most dishonest sense possible. She had sent me 3 vague messages about financial transparency. She had asked in the group chat whether anyone else thought Mom was being isolated. She had made comments at dinner about elderly people being vulnerable around whoever had access to their accounts. She had never once said, in plain language, that she wanted the statements. She had spent weeks building an atmosphere instead of asking a question. That night I understood something I should have understood earlier. Lauren had not come there to clarify anything. She had come there to corner me in front of Mom. That realization made me calmer, not angrier. It was useful because calm is a lot harder to argue with when somebody is trying to paint you as a thief. I told Mom that if she wanted, I could call the bank right then and have them pull the full transaction archive. Lauren rolled her eyes and said I was trying to bully her with bureaucracy. Mom told her to stop performing and to answer the question. That was another ugly little moment that said more than a whole speech would have. My mother did not speak like that unless she was deeply disappointed. Lauren tried to say she was only looking out for Mom. Mom asked why, then. She had spent the last 2 months asking me for help with her own car insurance without once bringing up the savings. That mattered because Lauren had, in fact, been using me for practical stuff the entire time. She wanted me to explain paperwork for her rental renewal. She wanted me to check whether a medical bill belonged to Mom or to the hospital. She wanted me to take screenshots of everything and send it to her because she was too busy to sit down with the computer. She wanted my help whenever there was a task. She wanted my silence whenever there was a story. I had started to see that pattern only after I looked back at all the little things she had said. She had never actually asked for clarity. She had asked for leverage. At some point in the argument, Mom finally pushed her chair back and stood up. She had to brace a hand on the table to do it. Her face had that pale, strained look that comes before tears and before anger, sometimes both. She said she was not going to have a financial fight on her birthday. She said she wanted every statement on the table, every message, every receipt, and she wanted it done honestly. Then she looked straight at Lauren and said if someone had a problem with how her money was handled, they could explain it calmly like an adult, instead of throwing accusations over green beans. Lauren started crying then, but it was not the kind of crying that ends an argument. It was the kind that tries to turn one. She said she could not believe Mom was choosing me over her. That line was such a perfect little manipulation that I almost admired it. It had everything a guilt trip needs: a false binary, a betrayal frame, and just enough vulnerability to make a decent person wonder if they were being cruel. Mom was not in the mood for it. She asked Lauren to sit down and stop making herself the victim in a discussion about bank statements. That made Lauren actually stop crying for a second. I could tell she had not expected that. I had seen my mother get firm before, but usually she softened eventually. That night she did not. She said she was tired of hearing that her children were fighting over her as if she was already dead. Then she asked me to show her the full archive from the bank portal on my laptop. I did. The transfer records were even clearer on the bigger screen. The old account had been opened years earlier, when Mom and Dad were still married. After Dad died, Mom kept the account because she was used to it, and because she hated changing anything that already worked. The balance had been sitting there untouched except for the occasional transfer in from Social Security and a few interest payments. The day we moved it, the old debit card had been active. The password had not been changed in years, and Mom had just gotten a warning letter from the bank about suspicious sign-in attempts from another state. That part is important because it changed how the whole thing looked. It was not me randomly deciding to move money. It was me responding to a risk my mother had noticed and had been scared enough to discuss in detail with me. I had documented the fraud alert number. I had documented the branch visit. I had documented the new savings account number, which Mom had confirmed by text. I had even documented that the branch manager recommended setting the account so no online withdrawals could be made without a separate confirmation call. When Mom saw all of that, her shoulders dropped a little. Not because she was calm, because she had recognized her own handwriting in the paperwork and her own fear in the texts. Lauren saw that too, which I think is why she went quiet for a minute. The problem with a lie in a room full of paper is that the paper does not care how emotional you get. I expected her to keep fighting, but she did something worse. She said I had probably used Mom's fear as an excuse to get control. That would have been harder to dismiss if she had not already lost the factual argument. Mom asked her when she had become so interested in control. That was the first time I saw Lauren actually look afraid. Not guilty. Afraid. Those are different things. Guilt is internal. Fear is practical. It means somebody can see the floor shifting under them. Mom told her she would like an explanation for a different issue, namely why there had been several debit card charges from a home improvement store and a gas station on days Lauren had said she was too busy to visit. That came out of nowhere to me. I had not seen those charges because I had been looking only at the savings account transfer history. Mom had apparently been noticing the checking account for weeks. Lauren said those must have been mine, which was almost insulting because I lived 20 minutes away and had receipts for every time I filled my own tank. Mom asked her to stop lying. That sentence changed the entire night. It changed the room. It changed Lauren's face. And it changed my understanding of why she had really gone after me. Because suddenly it was not just about the savings. The savings accusation had been a shield. She had been worried I might look too closely at the rest of the finances. I looked at her harder then, and for the first time I felt that cold little click in my head that happens when a pattern becomes visible. I asked Mom if she had noticed any missing money from checking. She said yes. Not a lot at first. Small stuff. Cash withdrawals. Odd purchases. A grocery run that should have been $40 and came out to $120. A payment to a mechanic she did not remember authorizing. A pharmacy charge for medication she did not take. All of it had seemed like background noise while she was sick. She was embarrassed admitting it, which is exactly why so many people get away with this kind of thing. They count on the shame of the person being taken advantage of. Lauren cut in and said Mom was confused because of all the medications and stress. That was the wrong angle. Mom did not like being called confused. She had a very specific tone when she got offended. She asked Lauren whether she was calling her a liar or a fool. Lauren started to answer, then stopped. I think she realized whichever direction she chose would be bad. I remember looking at the table and seeing my own plate untouched. I was not hungry anymore. I was also not panicking, which was useful because somebody in that room had to stay grounded. I asked Mom if she wanted me to pull the checking statement history. She nodded. That was the first time all evening I saw her fully choose me, and I do not mean emotionally. I mean procedurally. She wanted facts. So I gave her facts. The checking account showed a pattern, not a dramatic one. Not enough to look criminal at first glance, just enough to be annoying if you were not paying attention. A few cash withdrawals, a few card swipes at times Mom had been in appointments. A restaurant charge on a night Lauren had supposedly stayed home with her own kid. A recurring utility payment I knew for a fact was not Mom's because Mom's cable bill was already on automatic draft. That was when my stomach really started to turn. I had initially assumed Lauren was just angry because she thought I was too involved. Now I was realizing she might have been using the exact access she was accusing me of abusing. There are moments in family conflict where the shape of the thing becomes clearer than the thing itself. This was one of those moments. Mom looked at the statements, then looked at Lauren and asked her if she had the card. Lauren said yes. She said Mom had told her to use it for errands. That part was true. Mom often asked one of us to grab something for her when she was too tired to go out, but that did not explain the pattern. Mom asked where the cash withdrawals went. Lauren said groceries, gas, prescription pickups, miscellaneous things. Mom asked why there were no receipts. Lauren said the receipts were probably lost. At that point, Mom did something I still respect her for. She did not yell. She did not cry. She told Lauren she was going to the bedroom to get the binder where she kept her checkbook and old receipts. That binder had always been her version of a security blanket. She came back 10 minutes later with 3 months of crumpled papers and a notepad where she had been tracking expenses in the shaky handwriting she used when she was tired. The amounts did not match, not even close. That was the first real silence of the night. Lauren stared at the papers like they had betrayed her personally. I could see her brain trying to figure out how to keep this from going completely sideways. It was too late for that. Mom asked her how much she had taken. Lauren said she had not taken anything. The problem with that answer is that it sounds like the start of a criminal defense even when it is true. Mom then opened the bank app on her tablet and scrolled to the cash withdrawals. Some of them had happened on dates Lauren had sent cheerful texts saying she was helping Mom rest. One had happened the afternoon Lauren said she was at work and asked me to drop off soup. Another had happened during the hospital appointment when I was sitting in the waiting room with Mom. That was the one that really got me. I remembered that day perfectly because Mom had been terrified before the echocardiogram, and I had spent half the afternoon trying to make sure she drank water. Lauren had shown up after, kissed Mom on the cheek, and acted all concerned. Apparently, she had also been using the debit card during that same window. I asked Mom whether she had given Lauren the PIN. She said yes because Lauren had said she needed it in case of an emergency. That was one of those sentences that feels harmless until it lands in the wrong hands. Lauren made a small sound and started saying there was nothing wrong with helping with errands. Mom asked why her errands cost so much. Lauren had no answer. The table had gone from a birthday dinner to an audit. It was surreal. There was cake sitting there, candles melted into one ugly puddle, and my mother was using her reading glasses to compare debit transactions like she was running a tiny forensic accounting firm in a suburban kitchen. I kept waiting to feel triumphant, but mostly I felt tired. That is the part nobody tells you. Winning something ugly usually just makes you exhausted. Mom eventually set the statements down and asked Lauren whether she had any more cash withdrawals to explain. Lauren said she needed to go home. Mom said no, she did not. That was the moment I knew the ground had shifted for real. Lauren had always been the type to escape when she thought accountability was coming. She would storm out, cry in the car, then text later as if the argument had been about tone instead of facts. This time, Mom was not letting her leave the room with the story still floating around unresolved. Mom asked one more time whether Lauren had used the card without permission. Lauren said she had used it only for Mom. Mom nodded like she was taking that in, then asked why a withdrawal had been made at an ATM near Lauren's apartment at 10:13 at night on a day Mom had been asleep by 9. Lauren froze. I had not even noticed that one yet. I looked at the statement again. The withdrawal was there. I remembered that night because Lauren had posted on social media about being too exhausted to do anything but collapse on the couch. Apparently the couch was near a cash machine. Lauren said it was probably a mistake. Mom just stared at her. There was no need for a speech after that. Everyone in the room understood what had happened even if nobody wanted to say it out loud. That was when Lauren started crying for real. Not manipulative crying this time, real crying. Ugly, embarrassed, desperate crying. She said she had been under pressure. She said she had bills. She said she had planned to pay it back. She said she had only borrowed from the account a little at a time because she did not know what else to do. Those words hurt Mom badly. I could see it. Not because of the money alone, because of the position it put her in. It meant the daughter she had trusted with errands had been treating her checking account like a short-term loan. It meant the suspicious charges I had been worrying about were not random at all. It meant Lauren had likely been building resentment at the same time she was taking from the very person she claimed to be protecting. Mom sat down again very carefully. She looked older in that moment than she had that morning. She asked Lauren how long. Lauren said a few months. Mom asked for how much. Lauren started crying harder and did not answer right away. I checked the statement myself. It was not a few $100s. It was several thousand, not enough to wipe Mom out. Enough to matter a lot on a fixed income. Enough to make prescriptions, utilities, and groceries feel tighter. Enough to be the reason Mom had been skipping her favorite little extras without saying anything because she thought prices were just going up. The cruelty of that made me physically angry, but I kept it under control because Mom needed me functional. She asked me if I had known. I said no. I told her I had suspected something was off with the checking account, but I had not known it was Lauren. That was true. I had been too focused on the savings move and the fraud protection. I had not looked at the checking account with enough suspicion because I had assumed Lauren was just disorganized. That was one of my mistakes, and I said so. Mom appreciated that. She has always respected it when somebody does not pretend to be smarter than they were. Lauren asked if we could talk about it privately. Mom told her there was nothing private left about the money. Then she told her she was going to call the bank in the morning and freeze the card. That was when Lauren finally panicked in a way that felt different from the earlier crying. She said she would not be able to get gas to get to work. Mom asked her why that was her problem after what she had done. Lauren said she had a kid to think about. Mom said she should have thought about her kid before taking from the account. There is a line in family fights where sympathy runs out completely. I think that was it. Lauren stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor hard enough that the dog barked from the living room. She said we were all ganging up on her. That was the first time she sounded angry instead of scared. I asked her to sit back down and go over the withdrawals one by one. I do not know why I said it like that. Probably because once I saw the pattern, I wanted to pin it down cleanly. She glared at me and said I was acting like some kind of accountant. I almost told her that accounting would have been helpful weeks ago. Instead, I stayed quiet. Mom told her to stop yelling in her house. That was another turning point, not the money, the house. Mom had been saying her house all evening and Lauren had been acting like that word was negotiable, But in that sentence, Mom made it plain she was not a guest in her own life. She was the owner of the room. That mattered because Lauren had gotten used to walking in and out like the place belonged to all of us equally. It did not legally, not emotionally. Not after Dad died and Mom paid the mortgage alone for 11 years with no help except a few repairs I covered when something broke. Lauren had been telling anyone who would listen that she had moved closer to help Mom. What she had really done was move closer to access. I saw it then. Maybe Mom saw it earlier and had just not wanted to believe it. She told Lauren to hand over the debit card. Lauren hesitated. Mom repeated it, slower this time, and Lauren finally pulled it from her wallet and slid it across the table like it burned her fingers. Mom took it and handed it to me. Then she told me to cut it up. I did. My hands were shaking a little by then, not from fear, but because I was angry enough to notice my own pulse. Mom asked me to call the bank first thing in the morning to lock everything down. She also asked me to print every statement for the last 6 months. Then she turned to Lauren and said she was going to need the truth about every charge, every cash withdrawal, and every time she had used the card for herself. Lauren started bargaining at that point, which was almost worse than the denial. She said she could explain some of it. She said not all of it was personal. She said she had been trying to keep the household afloat while I played financial manager. That one actually made me laugh out loud, but not because it was funny. Because it was exactly the kind of claim that falls apart under the smallest inspection. I paid the electric bill in March when Mom forgot. I arranged the plumber when the kitchen sink backed up. I sat with the insurance agent on hold for 42 minutes because Mom's policy had lapsed in a clerical error. I bought groceries, not often enough to brag about, but enough that I knew what was in the pantry. I had not been playing at anything. I had been doing things. Lauren had been taking. Mom seemed to understand that distinction instantly. She told Lauren to go home and bring back every receipt she had. Lauren said she did not keep them. Mom said then she would not be making any more withdrawals from her account. That sentence landed hard. I think Lauren realized finally that the account she had been treating like a family convenience was gone, not emptied, controlled. There is a difference. Mom then turned to me and asked if I had any reason to believe Lauren had touched the savings account too. I said no, not directly, but I had seen her ask questions about it after the transfer, and I had deliberately not answered much because the money was not hers. That answer mattered more than it should have. Mom looked at me for a long moment and nodded. I think she understood that I had been trying to respect boundaries where Lauren had been trying to erase them. The evening should have ended there, but family fights rarely end cleanly when money is involved. Lauren left with her face red and her hands shaking. She did not slam the door, which somehow made it worse. She just walked out with this stiff, wounded posture that made her look innocent to anyone who did not know better. I stayed behind to help Mom clean up because she was unsteady and angry and embarrassed and a little ashamed, even though she had done nothing wrong. That is another awful thing about betrayal. It makes the person betrayed feel like they failed the room. Mom kept saying she should have noticed sooner. I kept telling her that was nonsense. She was tired. She was sick. She was trusting her daughter. That is not negligence. That is normal. We threw away the cake because nobody wanted it anymore. I washed the plates. Mom sat at the table with the bank papers spread out in front of her like she was trying to force the truth into a shape she could live with. Eventually, she asked me one question I had not expected. She wanted to know whether I had moved the savings because I thought Lauren might steal it. I told her no. At the time, I had been thinking about fraud alerts and convenience and protecting her from scams. I had not been thinking about Lauren specifically. That was true, and also not true in the deeper sense. I think part of me had been uneasy about Lauren for a while and had chosen not to label it because family labels are expensive. If you call someone suspicious too early, then everything becomes a fight. If you wait too long, they get a head start. Mom understood that, or at least she seemed to. She said she wished she had listened when I first suggested making everything more formal. That was another painful part. I had suggested this before. We had talked about getting all the bills set up in one place. We had talked about a simple ledger. We had talked about removing cards from old accounts and keeping only one card in the house. Mom had agreed in principle, then delayed because she did not want to upset Lauren. Now the delay had come with a price tag. The next morning I went to the bank before work. I took Mom with me because she wanted to look at the accounts in person. That is the part that made everything feel official. Over the phone, things are just words. At the branch, it becomes real. The bank manager remembered us because I had been there before. She pulled the account history, verified the text that had been logged as supporting notes in the file, and confirmed that the savings transfer had been done with Mom present and signed authorization on file. That mattered because it shut down any argument that I had somehow unilaterally made the move. The manager also confirmed something else I had not expected. Lauren had tried to get information about the account twice after the transfer by calling the branch and asking general questions. She had not been authorized, so they had not given her anything. That was a relief and also annoying because it confirmed how interested she had been. Mom asked the manager to remove Lauren from any emergency contact listings and to set the checking account to require in-person verification for any changes. She also removed the debit card entirely. The manager helped her set up a new account alert system so every withdrawal over a small threshold would ping both her phone and mine. Mom was tired by the time we finished, but I could see something else under the tiredness. Relief. Not because she had learned her daughter was stealing from her. That relief was impossible. Relief because the story was no longer vague. There was no more fog. Just facts. Facts are ugly, but at least they are stable. We got lunch afterward because Mom said she was not going home hungry after all that. She ordered soup and ate half of it. I did not bring up Lauren unless she did first. She did not, which told me a lot. By then I was starting to understand that Mom was not only hurt, she was grieving the version of Lauren she had thought existed. That grief takes time. It also makes people weirdly practical. That week Mom met with a lawyer. I went with her because she asked me to sit in and take notes. We talked about a new power of attorney, a revised will, and a separate medical directive. Mom did not disinherit Lauren on the spot, which is another thing I appreciated. She was angry, but she was not impulsive. She wanted everything reviewed properly. The lawyer asked for copies of the bank statements and the texts. I handed them over. That was the second time I felt grateful for keeping records. The lawyer also explained that if Lauren had been taking cash and using the card without permission, Mom could report it as financial exploitation. Mom was quiet after that. I think the idea of turning her daughter into a case number was too much for her at first. She did not decide right away. She wanted time. I respected that. What I did not do was pressure her to make the strongest possible move. I have seen too many people make mistakes in family crises because they think anger is the same thing as clarity. It is not. We spent the next 2 weeks handling practical damage. The checking account got closed and reopened in a cleaner setup. The old debit card was canceled. Every auto pay was reviewed. I sat at Mom's kitchen table one night with her and a calculator and a notebook and went through each charge: cable, electric, water, phone, medications, the little streaming service she forgot she still paid for, a funeral flowers charge from last year that had never been canceled. It was not glamorous, but it was useful. Lauren texted me 3 times during that period asking whether we were really going through with involving the bank. I did not answer the first 2. The third time I replied that nothing had been hidden, so there was nothing to fear from checking the records. She did not like that. She called Mom instead. Mom did answer her. I was in the room for that part. I did not listen to every word, but I heard enough. Lauren insisted she had only borrowed money and meant to pay it back. Mom asked why she had not simply asked. Lauren said she knew Mom would say no, that honesty probably would have gone better if it had arrived before the withdrawals. Mom told her that knowing she would say no was not a blank check to take anyway. That was another line that should be obvious but somehow needed saying. Lauren asked whether Mom was really going to destroy the family over this. Mom said the family was already damaged by the stealing, not by the paperwork. I think that was the first time Lauren truly realized Mom was not bluffing. A week later, the lawyer sent a formal request for repayment documentation. Not a threat, just a formal request. The numbers were laid out. Dates, amounts, withdrawal locations, running total. Seeing it all in writing made it uglier. I think that is why Lauren finally stopped denying the whole thing and shifted to minimizing it. She admitted the withdrawals had happened. She said the cash had mostly gone to her bills. She said she had been behind on rent because her ex had stopped helping. She said she had kept telling herself she would catch up before anyone noticed. That explanation did not excuse anything, but it at least made the behavior legible. People steal for a lot of reasons. Panic, pride, entitlement, desperation, sometimes all 4 at once. That does not make them innocent. It just makes them human in a very disappointing way. Mom still wanted repayment. So did the lawyer. Lauren could not produce enough to cover it immediately, which was predictable. What happened next was a payment plan and a very uncomfortable shift in family dynamics. Lauren moved out of the house she had been renting nearby because she could not keep pretending she was the helper while being treated like a trusted fiduciary. She was furious about that. She said Mom had turned against her. Mom said she had turned against the theft. That distinction mattered and kept mattering. As for me, I got a temporary explosion of guilt from the rest of the family because people hate being forced to choose sides when they have not been paying attention. An aunt called me cold. A cousin said I should have handled it privately. An uncle who had not visited Mom in 2 years suddenly had a lot of opinions about forgiveness. I kept my responses short. I sent the bank statements only to the people who asked in good faith. That number was smaller than I expected. Once people saw the dates and the withdrawals, the criticism quieted down. Paper has a way of shrinking loud opinions. Lauren, meanwhile, went through a whole phase of acting like she had been misunderstood. She told people she had been helping Mom and got punished for being honest. She did not mention the cash withdrawals. She did not mention the unauthorized use of the debit card. She did not mention that she had tried to make me look like a thief first. That would have been too much reality for her version of the story. The weirdest part was how ordinary life kept happening around all of it. Mom still needed groceries. The trash still had to go out. Her follow-up cardiology appointment still happened. I still had to pick up prescription refills and replace the kitchen light fixture that flickered every time it rained. There was no dramatic pause in the world just because our family had imploded around a bank account. That is one of the things I remember most clearly from that time. It was not all confrontation. It was also receipts, pharmacy drive-thrus, potholes in the parking lot, and a stubborn printer that jammed every single time Mom tried to print the new account summary. Real life does not stop for betrayal. It just forces you to deal with betrayal between errands. A month later, Mom called a small family meeting. Not a big dramatic one. Just her, me, Lauren, and my Aunt Carol, who Mom trusted to keep everybody from spiraling. The lawyer had advised Mom to keep things documented and calm. She did. She went over the repayment plan. She went over the new financial rules. She said clearly that Lauren could visit, but she would not have access to cards, passwords, or accounts. Lauren tried to argue that this was cruel. Mom asked her whether she thought taking money from a sick woman was gentle. That ended that. The meeting was miserable, but it was honest. Lauren did not apologize cleanly. She apologized in the awkward way people do when they are trying to save face at the same time. She said she was sorry things got out of hand. Mom said no, things did not get out of hand. Things were handled badly on purpose. That distinction hit hard. After the meeting, Lauren cried in the driveway. I did not comfort her. I do not say that with pride or cruelty. I just did not have anything left to give her. I had spent weeks being the one who had to carry the practical load while she tried to shape the narrative. At some point, compassion for someone who is still lying to the world becomes indistinguishable from volunteering to be used again. I had reached my limit. The repayment itself became its own boring little saga. Lauren made payments late, then on time, then late again. Then she started sending partial amounts with notes that tried to make her sound like the victim of a family tribunal instead of the person who had drained a checking account. Mom did not engage with the notes. She simply deposited the money and kept records. That was probably the smartest thing she could have done. No emotional letters, no fights, no negotiation beyond what the lawyer had already formalized. Lauren hated that because it denied her the theater she wanted. I also learned something uncomfortable about myself during that stretch. I had always thought being patient was enough. It is not. Patience without documentation just gives manipulative people more time. I had been lucky that the texts existed. I had been lucky that I had not deleted the bank emails. I had been lucky that I printed things when I should have. But after this, I made myself less lucky and more prepared. I saved receipts. I kept notes. I took screenshots. I archived texts. I started assuming that any family kindness involving money needed a paper trail. That sounds cold until you have watched someone weaponize your own helpfulness. Mom got stronger over the next few months, not emotionally all at once, but practically. She learned the new banking app. She set up alerts. She started checking the account every Friday morning with her coffee. She even joked once that she had become more organized than I was, which was mostly true and not offensive coming from her. What changed most was her confidence, not because she was happy, because she was no longer pretending. The problems were smaller than they were. That helped her more than anything. The house felt different after Lauren's access was gone, quieter, safer, not completely healed, just less tense. Mom stopped flinching whenever the phone buzzed with a bank notification. She stopped leaving her checkbook in random places. She also stopped making excuses for Lauren, which I think hurt her more than the money in a weird way. People always think the worst part of family betrayal is the money. Sometimes it is the realization that you built a whole set of expectations on a person who was already comfortable lying to you. Lauren and I did not reconcile quickly. We still do not have the kind of relationship people like to pretend is possible after something like that. We are civil now, polite mostly. She sees Mom on holidays if Mom says it is fine. She does not touch the finances. She does not pretend otherwise. That boundary cost us something permanent, and I do not think it can be fully repaired. I am not happy about that, but I am also not sorry. The final irony is that Lauren was the one who had tried to frame me as the greedy one. She stood at my mother's table and accused me of taking money from a sick woman when the opposite was already visible in the records. She wanted the emotional advantage of being the outraged daughter. What she got instead was a stack of statements she could not explain. That is why the moment with the texts mattered so much. It was not just a comeback. It was the first clean crack in her version of reality. The date stamps did the heavy lifting. My mother's glasses did the rest. Once Mom could actually read the transfer history and compare it to the messages, there was nowhere left for Lauren to hide. I still think about that birthday sometimes. Not because I enjoy it, because it taught me how quickly a family story can turn when people assume nobody kept records. It taught me that calm is not the same as passivity. It taught me that protecting someone sometimes means being the boring person with the folder. It also taught me that a person can sit at your mother's table and accuse you of theft while they are actively standing on a pile of their own withdrawals. A year later, Mom asked me to help her update the beneficiary paperwork on a few accounts. She looked at me over her glasses and said she never wanted another surprise like that again. I told her neither did I. We laughed a little at that, which felt good because it was not fake laughter. She was healthier by then, more settled, still sharp, still able to see through nonsense when she had the facts in front of her. Lauren eventually paid back most of what she took. Not all at once, not graciously, but enough that the lawyer was satisfied and Mom felt like she could finally close that chapter. The money mattered. What mattered more was that Mom stopped doubting her own memory. She had spent too long wondering whether she had been too tired, too sick, too trusting. She had not been. She had been lied to. That is a terrible thing to learn about one of your children. It is also a relieving thing to finally know. As for me, I got a reputation in the family for being the one who keeps records now. I do not mind it. It is not glamorous, but it is useful. Every so often somebody jokes that I treat family like a business. I usually just shrug. After what happened, I would rather be the guy with a spreadsheet than the guy who has to prove he was right after the damage is already done. The whole thing changed the family in ways I did not expect. Some people got quieter around money. Some got defensive. Some apologized for not noticing sooner. A few never said anything at all. That was fine. The truth did not need applause. It just needed enough sunlight to stay visible. And that night at my mother's table, with the green beans gone cold and the birthday cake untouched, it only took one look at the dates for everything to stop being a mystery. My sister had wanted a scene. She got a paper trail instead. That was what saved me. That was what saved Mom. And that was why, when she accused me of taking Mom's money, I could look right at her and know I was not the one who needed to explain anything.